was ever published. Each day that a family member dies, parts of our history are being thrown away. I was reading the other day on the plane down here of the Reginald Lewis African American Museum that's open in Baltimore. And they're essentially just going around trying to get people to open up their basements, their attics, to find memorabilia. And you know, John Lewis, who's one of our history makers and your hometown hero, he is starting the National Museum, but the issue is what are we going to put in it? And where are our archival resources? We have to work before it's too late. And I plead with each and every one of you here that if you don't choose to be involved with us, but I hope that you will do, that even on the granular level of your families, that you do something. Now, as I was saying, we started, and if you will, I'm going to just show a few things. We started in Chicago the first year, just in Chicago. And so little of our history is really recorded. Now, we started out with the website. Get Black people talking about and valuing their history, so the larger community will value it also. So we won't continue to be the backdrop of this nation and be the emblem for Americana and never, ever get the credit. I mean, it is a shame, and we cannot no longer participate in that. It's my pleasure now to introduce Lorraine Toussaint. Della Reese couldn't be with us this evening. She's resting up for tonight. Lorraine actually sort of embodies what I've been talking about, or a show that she was on called Any Day Now. That was my favorite show of all time. Because it took, and are many of you familiar with that show? Because it was a wonderful show on Lifetime. And I loved it because it approached our history in a different way, in a refreshing way. Not a guilt-ridden, it showed the intricacies of like this, you know, that there are friendships that exist, that the relationships in the South were often complicated relationships. Tell her that my background, though I'm a lawyer by training, began in the theater because it's all sort of storytelling. But I remember as a young girl, almost every Black person walking around has, but we don't know much about that whole history, or we're not talked about. I was in a small town in Ohio. I learned about George Washington Carver and slavery didn't sound good, and I couldn't believe that someone could have, and I found the treasure troves of the Schomburg Library, and so I, like she, and that's why I was asking what are my father wanted me to go. Tonight, she's been on the series Queen. She's of Trinidadian extraction. She says that she is Lorraine Toussaint. Thank you.
She became a lawyer, and I played one on TV. And you said something a moment ago that I'm one of the lucky ones, and that struck a chord because, yes, I am. There's no doubt about it. But what's that phrase of luck? It's preparation meeting, what is it, timing or opportunity? Opportunity meaning preparation. And so much of my preparation came from my mom, who absolutely believed in me and didn't turn a deaf ear when I said, as a little girl of 10 years old, that I wanted to be an actress, when she was working 2 jobs at the time. And I had decided to look up in the Yellow Pages as to what there was to be in America, because I didn't even know what jobs there were, what occupations there were. This was a brand new world. And so in reading the Yellow Pages, I thought, well, let's start at the beginning. I got to A, it said accounting. I said, no. I just got away from that in the Caribbean. And then it said acting. And I said, well, that sounds pretty good. let's see what that's about. So I called the largest ad on the page and made an appointment for my mother. She then came home and I said, you know, I'm going to be an actress and I've made an appointment with the acting school because I need to know how to do it. And she then said, well, honey, I'm working 2 jobs, we can barely eat. So about 3 months later, we were going to a wedding and I was the only child, so I could talk my mom into 1 or 2 things. And we were walking down Flatbush Avenue. She was going to get a dress for herself and one for me. And I made it so that we walked past the acting school. And I said, Mom, this is the school we were talking, I told you about. Just go talk to them, just talk to them. And my mother said, all right, I'll go talk. And she went up those stairs, and an hour later she took the money she was going to buy her dress with and enrolled me in acting school. And so when you say that I've been lucky, I owe everything to my mother. And in a broader context, I owe everything that I am to what she stood for, and her mother, what her mother instilled in her, and what her mother instilled in her mother and her mother. And I come from a matriarchal family, that's why I'm not mentioning fathers, but it's the same thing. I had occasion to be in Africa about a month ago. And I'd never been to Africa. I'd been to every other continent. I don't know why I'd been putting off going to Africa. And on a whim, someone said, come. And I said, okay. And I went to Senegal. And Africa was very different from what I expected. I expected I'm a smart girl. I watch the nature channels. I've seen Roots. I've seen the Zulu documentary. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I had this vision of, I would at least see something running through a bush, some animal I'd never seen. I'd get a glimpse of something, even though I was going to Dakar. But it actually was interesting how little I knew of that continent. So I landed in Africa, and of course it's sub-Saharan, which means it's a desert. There are no trees. It's dusty. It looks like Mississippi red mud, except dusty. The people are dusty, the buildings are dusty, it's just dusty. And it's on the ocean, so there's this juxtaposition of incredible barrenness with incredible lushness of the ocean. And the people, I had an extraordinary experience because the women, looked like me. So much so that most of the Senegalese were annoyed with me when they spoke Wolof and I didn't respond. They just, and I tried to respond in very bad French because my grandparents are French Caribbean. And then they thought I was just putting on airs, that the native language wasn't good enough and I wanted to speak the colonized language. But as I went on, I began to get the oddest sense of being in a place where I could move anonymously. And that was because they just assumed that I was home. While I was there, I went to Gore Island, which is just off the coast of Dakar, which I'm sure all of you know that it was one of the final ports for West Africa, where all of the slaves were rounded up and processed on Gore Island. And as I'm leaving Dakar and I'm going on the boat to Gore, I could feel something sort of welling up in me, and as the island comes into view, I'm standing on the deck and I'm just looking as we're pulling into the port, and just being enormously aware that this journey had been made several times. This journey had been made a lot. And interestingly, on my journey, right next to me were hip-hop kids listening, African kids listening to rap, pulling into Gore. I did a tour of the island and visited the slave house, the main slave house where all of the slaves were processed. And I tell you, standing in those rooms where it's pretty much unchanged, where the men were separated from the women, and where the strong were separated from the weak, and the children from the infants, and the mothers from the infants, and the holding cells for each one, including the sick, and the prison cells, which were maybe some of them as large as this podium. I was amazed at how close it still was, how right under my skin it was, that memory of slavery. And I started thinking about my history and the fact that the memories and the feelings that I was having then were in my bones. They were not anywhere in my brain. And as I stood at the door, there is a single door in the middle of this building that is called the Door of No Return. And on the other side of this door is a drop into the ocean. And every single slave that boarded the ships walked through this door. Many of them trying to jump overboard, where at the time, I'm glad you're having dessert and not the main course, there were sharks, because they knew it was a feeding place, because many of the slaves would just jump. And it was one of those moments when I had the opportunity to stand there, literally on the stones of my ancestors, on the bones of my ancestors, and chart my journey from there to here, to where I stand now. And I am so grateful for what they have suffered and what they've endured and how they've triumphed. The other thing is, I was standing at the Door of No Return, and I was standing in that building, I realized with those separations in those rooms of the men, the women, the young, the old, the strong, the weak, the ill, they didn't care about history. They didn't care about units, family units, tribes, religions, languages, cultures. And so we all got on this boat, just lost, separated and from who and what we are, because who we are is our history. Who we are is our history. And so we've come into this new world, and we're still fledgling in this new world without a history. And so when I got a call to be a part of this organization, I was very moved by it, because how do we reclaim a history? I don't think it's even possible to reclaim a history. I think that history is in our bones. It is on the bones that we have stood, and those that will come after us will stand, God willing, on our bones. And there's something that is transmuted in that, because I know I felt it in Gore. But the other aspect of that is just knowing who we are as a people, and the fact that we have no connection to our original, to our origin. I think that what we're doing here in this room, and what we're doing tomorrow, and what the history makers have been doing, is we are attempting to create a history. And one of the ways we do that is in documenting it, is in documenting who we are and where we have come from, to the point where we can remember. And I think that with each generation that comes along, this history becomes more and more important, because it begins to define us. We've been wandering in the dark for so long. And this is one of the ways to turn on the light. I just finished a project, Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God. And Oprah Winfrey is producing it. Boy, there is an extraordinary woman. And she had put together an amazing cast, Halle Berry and Ruby Dee, and just amazing actors. And one of the places that I went to source material was at the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston's recordings of the slave narratives. And as I sit there listening to hours of tapes of the extraordinary stories of our ancestors, our elders, what they had endured, the rites of passage that they had given me, I was so grateful for the sound of their voices, the vibration of their being, the actual history, the actual storytelling. And so I congratulate you on your efforts and what you're doing. I think it's extraordinarily important because our gifts are evident everywhere. As we are creating a new history, it is clear that those that have gone before us were extraordinary. They were kings and queens, and they were scientists, and they were artists. And somewhere in the bones, those memories are buried because here we are, excelling again. I was just watching the Pistons last night, 2 nights ago, and I'm a Lakers fan. And if those Pistons were not poetry in action, I don't know what they were. It was extraordinary. And I thought, here we are, just beauty itself. So thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. I treasure it, I value it, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Back to our dinner. I do want to acknowledge a few people. I'd like to thank Alice Bussey, who provided the beautiful floor arrangement. She's worked with us. And I'd also like to acknowledge, once again, Herman Russell. I had the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Russell, and he came to Chicago, and he's going to come tomorrow night, which I'm so happy about. But he's been putting up our cruise here in Atlanta at his Castleberry Inn, which is has been very important to us. Like I said, we're at 800 interviews, and we're going to cross the 1,000 mark this year, which is a very important mark. But our work is really just beginning. And Cynthia Moreland, Cynthia, who was here at the beginning, is very important for us. She will be representing us here. Our goal here in Atlanta and the Southeast region, with each of our regional operations, and we've started one in Washington this year, but our goal in Atlanta will be to get to 200 interviews a year. And we have a formula, it works. It takes everyone really working together. We need all of your help, either in helping us identify funding sources, but also in helping us identify history makers. The historians are looking to us in many ways. There's so much of our history that is just not known, but it's all resides. And I look around this room and lots of you. The stories are within you, and we have to bring the stories out. And what will that mean for us as a people? It will mean that we will take our rightful place, really, as the Horatio Alger story of this country. I often say that to people, and they look at a quizzical look, but we as African Americans have historically taken a piece of coal and made a diamond of it. But we've got to step up to the plate, and I want to thank you for coming. For those of you who won't be with us tonight, you're going to miss a wonderful program. It's storytelling at its best. It's our celebrity interview where Lorraine Toussaint will be interviewing Della Reese. A lot of the younger people know Della from just touched by an angel, but she had a fabulous recording career way before that, and it's been a pleasure, and we've brought out a lot of the archival footage that'll be shown tomorrow night. So thanks once again. Faye, we'd love to get you back up here. Faye actually came by way of an artist who's been working with us, who's been traveling around the country as we've been trying to expose other people to us. A man named Everett Green, and he told me she was going to be a great talent. She's from Atlanta. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Faye Ray and friends. Thank you for coming.
I would drive them all. wanted to do my part to help the history makers succeed, especially in Atlanta, where there's such a rich history. So tonight, we have come to the legendary singer, actress, and minister. In fact, on my way over, I was riding with my granddaughter, who's right here, and I kept asking her, do you know, like, Touched by an Angel? She said, I grew up with her on jazz. So I called my mother on the phone, and I said, Mom, you're gonna be real jealous tonight. I get to see Della Reese. And she went on and on and on about how wonderful she was as an advocate, more so than any, especially in the arena of television. So even though she may not be here, let's give a shout out to Della Reese. Not here at the request. Just making sure you're paying attention. She will be here. We want to honor some folks who have made it possible. UPS, the McDonald's Corporation, America's Favorite Chicken, Bank of America, Jackmont Hospitality, and our other. She gets really embarrassed when she knows I had to introduce her. See, she's over there now, just like, okay, what's she gonna do now? She's her because I'm a alumni of the Ohio State University. Thank you. She's from Michigan State. But she has done some wonderful things to further education, especially for older women. So when you see the name Ingrid Saunders Jones, and I hope we can ignore that, and it is certainly first class. So, Ingrid Saunders Jones, who is Vice President of the Coca-Cola Company and also Chair of the Coca-Cola Foundation, is here to bring remarks about why they have supported this. Miss Jones. Queen Jones.
It is really a pleasure to be here this evening. Last January, following a couple of months of conversation with Juliana Richardson, the Coca-Cola Company hosted an introductory luncheon, if you will, for the history makers. And I really thought, because I was so appreciative of the work that was being done by the history makers, I really thought that the best thing that we could do at that time was actually make sure that other people knew about the history makers, and that's why we had that luncheon. And I want to thank all of the people who responded to that. Yvonne Cooper from UPS responded, and many, many others responded. They said, let us know what we need to do. And you know, there really is no place better than Atlanta for the work of the history makers. When you think of all the people who have come through here and those who still live here. And we didn't get an opportunity to capture some who were of and from Atlanta, but we must capture those who are still with us. And this is the city of Coretta Scott King and Martin King and Andy Young and Maynard Jackson and Joe Lowry and C.T. Vivian. And so, Juliana, you are in the right place. So I'm going to close. I'm just going to say welcome to Atlanta officially. That was your introduction. This is your launch. There is much to come. The Coca-Cola Company is pleased to be involved with both, and we wish you well. And now my official duty is to bring up Brooke Jackson Edmonds. Brooke, where are you? Here, Brooke. Now, you know, this is Maynard Jackson's baby girl. Give her some love.
Hello, everybody. Like Ingrid, I just want to say thank you for being here tonight with us. And my husband and I were asked to step forward and fill a role as event chairs. My husband is not here. He's 5 minutes late, but he'll be here probably just as I finish reading his part. But we were happy to do this. The History Makers is obviously a very exciting organization and a very worthy cause, so it's our pleasure. Della Reese has had an exciting and amazing life and career, and we'll get to see a lot of that tonight. Thanks to all my friends for stepping forward and helping us to raise money. Just wait till next year. Ron, my husband, and I hope that you'll continue to support the history makers and their amazing effort to pull together 5,000 interviews by 2008. Tonight's event is just the beginning for making Atlanta and its history an important part of this national treasure.
You know this, she's, what, 6, 7? I don't want to embarrass her, but I will. Now I want Amika Okiani.
Good evening. When we were presented with this opportunity to support tonight's event, we at Sodexo knew we had to do it. Sodexo is very dedicated to supporting diversity. And without organizations like History Makers, our history is at a serious, and I mean serious, risk of being lost forever. And we must prevent this from happening. The History Makers gives us a unique opportunity to save our history for the benefit of generations to come. So we at Sodexo are very, very glad and feel honored to support this event. Thank you.
You see how good. But I'd like to, I'm very proud to introduce a lot of people who are here tonight and here family. I'd like to introduce to you Christine Martinez, who's the regional administrator. They're also one of the proud sponsors. Let me introduce Christine Martinez. This is like too easy. But so we will give a thorough indoctrination, Atlanta style, to the person. I'll tell you personally, my mother's an educator, and one of the things that I guess has made me fairly successful in Atlanta is the fact that I have been just fascinated with our history, and the history that is so rich in Atlanta, in Georgia. I mean, if you look at Ray Charles's funeral was just today, and where is he from? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I see Richard Long out here, who is giving me an education about Lena Horne. I mean, it's just so wonderful that we're gonna be able to save a lot of what we might have lost had it not been for this wonderful woman who had the vision to do what I wish I could do in life. So tonight I introduce to you the founder and executive director, Juliana Richardson.
Thanks, Jocelyn, and thank everyone for being here. I owe a special gratitude of thanks to Ingrid Saunders-Jones, who was gracious and introduced us on January 28th here in Atlanta to a group of 100 people, and it really helped us blossom to this. So I'm really pleased, and Frances Tompkins, who worked with us, and Cynthia Moreland, who is here. I don't know if Cynthia is anywhere in the, there she is. Cynthia is our regional coordinator here. She and Ira Moreland, her husband, have moved here back from Atlanta after years of absence, and so you will get to know her. I want to, seeing all of you here tonight does me a great deal of good. And we have a wonderful show planned for you, a woman who has a wonderful sense of history that goes back way before Touched by an Angel, and you'll learn more about that. I want to thank also my hardworking staff, Crystal Foster, Scott Stearns, Joan Flintoff, Larry Crow. Scott Stearns and Larry Crow people may have known because they were doing interviews. Hotels put us up. We had a grant from the Knight Foundation, and that year was extremely important to us because we started back in February of 2000 doing LA. And then we were lucky enough to get this grant from the Knight Foundation, and we did 28 communities around the country, and that really nationalized us. And I'm proud to say that we are at 800 interviews, and we will easily cross the 1,000 mark this year, but we can only do it with all of your support. This is a very expensive undertaking. It's a $30 million undertaking. We've raised $3.5 million, so I appreciate any amount of money that comes in. But the other thing that we need is because our community needs to open up. And we cannot rely on historians because they are relying on us. And so we need everyone to really step forward and help us identify people who we should be interviewing. We are in the process, and we have as much urgency as anyone, as much as the Holocaust people, who interviewed 52,000 Holocaust survivors in 5 years. Our goal is to do 5,000 interviews, and we want to rival the only massive acquisition that has occurred in our country, and that was with the slave narratives. And there were actually 2,300 former slaves interviewed between the years of 1936 and 1938. But that history is not our whole story. Our story extends beyond our slave history, and we need everyone's help. But even our modern day civil rights history is getting old and dying off. And so that's the importance of this project. I want to say, for those of you who are new to us, I would welcome you to go to our website, which we're very proud of. But our website is just the sampling tool. It's www.thehistorymakers.com. We started out with a mere 1,000 hits per month. We're now getting 2 to 3.5 million hits per month. And it's very interesting where people are coming from. 100 colleges and universities, 100 foreign countries, Lithuania, Germany, UK, Canada being some of the top users. Government agencies like the Department of Defense and the National Science Foundation, and news gathering agencies like ABC, CNN, and the BBC. So it proves that there is a need, but it's time for African Americans to step up and really tell their story and realize that they do have a history, and it's hidden among all these faces that I see. And if you choose not to be involved with us, I would encourage you, family by family, start really talking to your elders and learning what your history is, and stop when people die. Stop throwing away the history in garbage cans because you think it has no value. We do have value, and we are essentially the Horatio Alger story in this country. Historically, we have taken a piece of coal and made a diamond out of it. I want to thank especially our sponsors, Bank of America, America's Favorite Chicken, Jackmont Hospitality, Thrifty Car Rental, H.J. Russell and Company, WSB TV, Georgia Public Broadcasting, the Atlanta Daily World, Atlanta Tribune, and everyone else has helped us, and the people who stepped forward, Coca-Cola, the Hilton Hotels, UPS, McDonald's. We would not have been here without you. It was 3 years ago that I came here with my crew when I was sort of trying to test things out, and we spent 3 weeks here actually, based out of the Hilton Atlanta, doing interviews, and we're doing them here in Atlanta and going to Macon and Columbus, Georgia. At that time, I interviewed a man named Robert Church. He's right here. He's a 95-year-old agriculturalist. Where's Mr. Church? There he is. He's the oldest living Boulay member in the country. He was head of the Ham and Egg Show in Fort Valley, Georgia, and it's encased in the Smithsonian. He's one of our living legends. Also here tonight are, I think, and I hope I don't miss anyone, but Dr. Sam and Dave Band, Representative Carolyn Smiley, who I forgot to acknowledge last night, but he was a living legend here, and she's among our oldest living history makers, but she is the most spry because our history is really dying off. And the thing is that realize that if we continue to burden our community, single generation, no other community does that. But every single generation, we are reinventing ourselves, and it's too hard a work, and we need to reach back and show the world the beauty of our experience. And that's all I say, and all I want to say is thank you. We need all of your help in whichever way that you can give it, and I want to thank you all for being here. And you're going to have a treat tonight with an evening with Della Reese. Thank you.
Juliana, thank you, and thank you for being here, and thank you for the work that you do. Ladies and gentlemen, it's showtime. I'm Jim Lyle. I'm the Executive Director here at Georgia Public Broadcasting, and I want to welcome you to this wonderful event. Special thanks to the history makers for seeking us out, asking us to be a part of this, asking for the use of this wonderful facility, and we're certainly glad that you are here. I am proud to announce to you tonight that tonight's program will air on GPB television in September of this year, and again in February of '05. And we are certainly glad to have that opportunity. I also want to thank WSB Channel 2 for providing a crew to cover tonight's event. And again, we're glad you're here. Thank you.
Now, you found out why this is why we're here. This is why we are here. Because I want this one to grow up understanding whose shoulders she has stood on to get where she's gonna be. Now, she's told me you're gonna be a pilot doctor, right? So she can take care of Nana, and she can fly her all over the world. But we could not do it. We could not do it without the folks that are part of the history makers. And I am just so excited that we are about to meet one of them and hear her inside story. An evening with Della Reese. So, please proceed to Studio C. Before doing so, turn off your cell phones. This is a live to tape show, and we really don't want to have that music interrupting us. So, no one will be seated also after the taping begins, because as I say, we're live to tape. So, don't leave until the taping ends, because you will be shocked. Just kidding. You won't want to leave. The program lasts about an hour and 15 minutes. So we'd like to seat first our sponsors and also people who are challenged in wheelchairs. So please give them first right. Volunteers are prepared.